1933, a Chinese laborer found a skull in the foundations of a bridge in Harbin. He hid it at the bottom of a well, where it sat for the next 85 years. When it finally came out, it turned out to be the only nearly complete skull of a ghost species, a kind of human we had known about for 15 years but had never seen, until now. The skull is a Denisovan. Denisovans were a sister species to the Neanderthals, a parallel branch of humans who lived across Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. We had their entire genome. We had never had their face. Until June 2025, when two papers, one in Science, one in Cell, closed the case. The lead researcher, Chalmei Fu of the Institute of Vertebrate Paleontology in Beijing, put it in a single sentence. After 15 years, she said, "We have given the Denisovan a face. This is the story of how it happened. A skull buried during the Japanese occupation of Manchuria, a worker who chose to keep it from a foreign army, a controversial Chinese paper, a laboratory in Beijing that refused to give up, and a single tooth with plaque on it that turned out to be holding the answer the entire time." In 1933, Harbin was occupied territory. The Japanese Imperial Army had taken northeastern China the year before, and the city sat at the heart of their puppet state of Manchukuo. The Songhua River cuts through Harbin, and that year, a crew of Chinese laborers were rebuilding a bridge across it. One of them, digging into the riverbank, struck a fossilized skull. He understood what it was, or at least he understood that it was old and rare, and that any artifact of value would be confiscated by the occupation authorities and sent to Tokyo. So he did not tell his foreman. He did not tell the soldiers. He took the skull home, wrapped it, and dropped it down the family well. He kept the secret for the rest of his life, 85 years. Just before he died, he told his grandsons what he had hidden and where. They went to the well. They pulled up a wrapped object that none of them had ever seen. In 2018, the family donated the skull to Hubei GEO University. The first scientists to examine it knew immediately what they were holding. The mandible was missing, but the cranium was almost intact. Brow ridges, brain case, cheekbones, the upper palate with a single preserved tooth. Almost no fossil hominin skull from Asia in this age range exists in this condition. None. In 2021, a Chinese team led by the paleoanthropologist Ji Qiang published a formal description. They named it a new human species, Homo longi, dragon man, after the Longjiang, the dragon river that runs through the region. The features were striking: massive brow ridges, heavier than any modern humans, a brain case of around 1,420 cubic centimeters, within the range of Homo sapiens, in some cases larger, a wide nose, a robust, square face. The minimum age was set at over 146,000 years. The Chinese team argued that Homo longi was a previously unknown sister species, closer to us than the Neanderthals were. The Western paleoanthropology community had a different reaction. Several researchers immediately suspected the same thing. The age was right. The geography was right. The morphology, the heavy brow, the large brain case, the cold-adapted build, all matched what genetics had been quietly predicting Denisovans should look like. The Harbin skull, the Western critics argued, was probably not a new species at all. It was the face of a species we had known about for over a decade. We just couldn't prove it. There was no DNA. To understand the problem, the story has to step back to 2010. That year, a team led by the geneticist Svante Pääbo extracted DNA from a single fragment of fingerbone recovered from a cave in southern Siberia called Denisova. The fragment was tiny, half a centimeter across. The bone had belonged to a young girl who died there more than 50,000 years earlier. When the genome came back, it didn't match anything. Not modern human, not Neanderthal. Something else, a third lineage of human, archaic, previously unknown. They named the species after the cave, Denisovans. Subsequent work showed that Denisovans had branched off from Neanderthals roughly 400,000 years ago. While the Neanderthals colonized Europe and the Middle East, the Denisovans spread across Asia, north into Siberia, south onto the Tibetan Plateau, possibly all the way into Southeast Asia and the islands beyond. For 15 years, every Denisovan find was tiny. A jaw fragment from a Tibetan cave, 2 teeth from a cave in Laos, a pinky finger, a piece of skull. Each fragment carried genetic information. None of them came together into anything that could be called a face. A whole species occupying half a continent for hundreds of thousands of years, known only as code. When the Beijing team began trying to extract DNA from the Harbin skull, they had an immediate problem. Ancient DNA recovery, as a rule, goes after one specific bone, the petrous bone. It's the dense piece of the skull that surrounds the inner ear. It is the densest bone in the body, and it preserves DNA better than anything else. Most of the Harbin skull's petrous bone had been sawed away before the scientists ever received it. The single best target for DNA was already gone. The team tried the rest of the cranium. The bone had spent decades in a humid well in northeastern China, heat in summer, freeze in winter, water in the rainy season. The conditions were almost custom designed to destroy DNA. Conventional extraction failed. There was one remaining tooth still set in the upper jaw. Crusted on its surface was the substance every dentist tries to scrape off: calculus. Fossilized plaque. Hardened layers of bacteria, food particles, and mineral bonded to the tooth over years and then sealed by burial. Chow Mei-Fu's team had a theory. Calculus hardens fast. Once it sets, it locks whatever is inside it. It might be acting as a microscopic time capsule, protecting fragments of the host's own DNA inside its mineral matrix, even after every other piece of the skull had degraded. They scraped the plaque off the tooth. They processed it. What came back was usable mitochondrial DNA, enough sequence to compare against the database. The match was unambiguous. The Harbin skull's mitochondrial DNA aligned with the Denisovan reference, the same sequence first read off the fingerbone at Denisovan cave 15 years earlier. While that paper was being written, a parallel team running on the same skull tried something different: proteomics. Proteins survive longer than DNA, and certain proteins differ between human lineages. They recovered 95 ancient proteins from the bone. 3 of them carried variants that are diagnostic for Denisovans. 2 independent molecular methods, same answer. The cell paper, with the dental calculus DNA, came out alongside a companion paper in Science with the proteomic confirmation. Same week, same conclusion. The Dragon Man was a Denisovan. The face we had been waiting for had been sitting in a Chinese museum the whole time. So now we know. Denisovans were not a smaller, gentler version of the Neanderthals. They were stockier. Their brain volume was, on average, larger than ours. Their cheekbones were wider, set further out. Their brow ridges were heavy and continuous. Their build was cold-adapted, shaped by the long winters of inland Asia. They lived in northeastern Asia between roughly 217,000 years ago and 106,000 years ago, overlapping with the Neanderthals to the west, and with the earliest waves of Homo sapiens moving up out of Africa to the south. For tens of thousands of years, 3 different kinds of humans shared the same continent. Then 2 of them disappeared. The Denisovans died out around 30,000 years ago. They did not leave cleanly. Before they disappeared, they interbred, repeatedly, with the modern humans moving into their territory. Their genes are still inside us. Tibetans live on a plateau where the average altitude is over 4,000 meters. Oxygen levels at that elevation are roughly 40% lower than at sea level. Most lowland humans, taken to that altitude for long enough, develop chronic mountain sickness. Tibetans don't. They adapt easily. They live there permanently. They have done so for thousands of years. The reason is a gene called EPAS1. It controls how the body responds to low oxygen. Tibetans carry a particular variant of EPAS1 that is extremely rare in any other human population. When geneticists traced where it came from, the answer was unmistakable. They inherited it directly from the Denisovans. A gene from a species that went extinct 30,000 years ago is what allows Tibetans today to walk the world's highest plateau without their hearts giving out. Tibetans aren't alone. Modern populations across Melanesia and Aboriginal Australia carry up to 5% Denisovan DNA, the highest archaic ancestry of any living humans. East Asians carry trace amounts. Native Americans carry small amounts. Most people of European descent carry almost none. Europe was Neanderthal country. For 15 years, we knew these inherited fragments were inside us. We could read them, we could time them. We just couldn't picture the people who left them. Now we can. Not everyone in the field is fully satisfied. The paleoanthropologist Shi-Jun Ni, one of the original authors on the Homo longi paper, has argued that the molecular evidence is suggestive rather than definitive, and that the skull might still represent a related but distinct lineage rather than a textbook Denisovan. Most of the field disagrees. Chris Stringer at the Natural History Museum in London accepts the identification. Benza Viola in Toronto accepts it. Two independent molecular signals, each pointing to the same lineage, plus a morphology that matches the predicted Denisovan profile, is a hard combination to argue against. The skull is, by the strongest evidence available, a Denisovan. For 85 years, a skull sat at the bottom of a well in northeastern China. For 15 years, an entire human species existed only as code, a sequence of letters on a screen, with no body, no face, no shape that anyone could point to and name. Then, someone scraped plaque off a single tooth. One molecule from a stranger's mouth, dead for 146,000 years, rewrote where we came from. That's what one molecule did. From the bottom of a well, from a single tooth, a ghost species got a face, and we got a clearer view of who we are.